Please welcome Mr. Lim.
Okay.
Firebase GDE from Malaysia.
Hello, I'm a Firebase GDE from Malaysia, so I'll probably first thing I would like to say is Kakungkap. I hope my Thai isn't that bad, but thank you all for joining me. So let me just introduce myself. My name is Lim Shang. I'm from your neighboring country, Malaysia. So I'm a Firebase GDE as well. So today I would like to talk to you about Google Assistant and how you can build conversational experiences with actions on Google. So before I proceed, I would like to know how many of you have heard of Google Assistant or action of Google before? Show of hands. Wow, many. So I'm glad to hear that. So just to give you a brief introduction, what we're going to do today is that I'm just going to go through some demonstration of what is Google Assistant and how you as developers or people pioneering to create your own product would use actions on Google as a new way of interacting with your users. So I'm sure most of you have heard of Google Assistant before, right? So most devices, Lollipop onwards, Marshmallow onwards, will have access to Google Assistant. So what is Google Assistant essentially? So what it is, let me just connect the, okay, let me just. So what is Google Assistant? Google Assistant allows you to actually use your voice in order to perform certain tasks. You can call up an app, you can run some sort of calculation, you can do all sorts of things with Google Assistant. So let's just to give a demonstration with Google Assistant. So usually you invoke Google Assistant by using the OK Google. So you will say, OK Google, what is the conversion rate from Malaysian ringgit to Thai baht? Essentially, it's a bit too far. So what's the conversion rate between Malaysian ringgit and Thai baht? So you will get a result like this. So let me just check the audio. So you get an output like this. So what it actually does is that you're actually invoking a conversion app in order to change the exchange rate from Malaysian ringgit to Thai baht. So this is how you actually can use Google Assistant to call and perform many tasks hands-free and by just using your voice. Of course, there are many built-in features in Google Assistant which you can use by default on your applications, on your phone, or on your devices, but how you as developers can build your own application in order to leverage on top of Google Assistant in order to produce this kind of voice applications to your users. So let's get started. So if you have any questions about the presentation along the way, please feel free to just go to the link above and just enter your questions. I'll be answering it later at the end of the session. So just an introduction, my name is Lim Shang. I'm a developer, mainly Java developer. I'm also a Firebase GDE, and I mainly work in these few technologies, Ionic, Angular, Java Spring, React Native, and Firebase, of course. So I do have a few open source projects on GitHub, mainly to do with sample applications running on Firebase, Angular, etc. So do take a look if you're interested in. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is building conversational experiences, right? So what does conversational experiences mean? You've heard of the term user experiences itself. So in this case, conversational experiences itself is how you as a user can communicate with your application through conversations. Yeah, so like usually when humans converse, right, we have more than one party talking to each other in the most natural way, in either English or Thai or etc. So how do we actually build application in a way that we as users are able to communicate with your applications in the most natural, more human-to-human interaction? So let's take a look at what is the differences between Google Actions and Google Assistant itself. So like what I've just demonstrated to you, Google Assistant is basically what you get on your phone. You can invoke it with the OK Google, and you can do all kinds of things with it. However, as developers, we want to extend this functionality to our own application. Let's say you have your own e-commerce application, you have your own apps that you want to talk to customers with. So this is one of the ways you as developers are able to leverage on. So take a look here. You will see that when the user says something, the Google Assistant will listen to it and take that details and try to look for an application on Google Action. So the Google Action has a huge marketplace of third-party developer apps, which you can install in your phone and get it running all the time. So once the action actually receives your request, you can, of course, continue to converse with it, asking them all kinds of questions, getting all kinds of results from the actions, and all of these results will then be parsed back to the Google Assistant, and therefore it lands into your phone. So let's take a look at some of the devices that is supported with Google Assistant. You'll notice that your Google Home, if you have one, has Google Assistant built in. In fact, it's running on Google Assistant alone. Your phone itself also contains Google Assistant itself, your Android smart watch as well, your smart TV, etc. So all of these devices will have access to your applications once you have actually uploaded it to the marketplace. So like I said before, what is Google Assistant? The way where users communicate with your phone through this Google Assistant, and you develop on top of Google Actions, and then your devices are just simply the ones that is spitting out results from your Actions applications. So these are the few languages that is currently supported. So good news is that Thai is also included inside. Thai. So English as well. So if you feel like developing an app for your community in Thai, you can of course do it. So instead of saying, okay, Google, and then you call the app in English, you can also do it in Thai as well. So I don't know what's the translation to that, but yeah, you can do that in all the following languages at the moment. So how do you actually call upon your app, or what rather you would summon the app to view? So as a traditional app, right, let's say you install it from the Play Store, you have to open your phone, you have to click on the app icon in order to launch the app, right? But for conversational apps running on Google Assistant, you can basically actually ask Google Assistant to call your app into the foreground. So basically use the following ways to actually do it. So you will say, hey Google, talk to your application name. So these are some of the ways you can invoke your application from Google. So at the end of the session, you of course can switch to multiple applications. So imagine you are driving and you need some sort of application to come into view and you don't want to text and drive, right? So obviously we can use Google Actions or Google Assistants in order to bring your app to view and give you information via voice. So what I've just talked about just now with OK Google, talk to what, right? All of these are actually called explicit triggering, meaning you are explicitly asking Google to launch the app by using the application name. So this is what we mean by explicit triggering. So one of the examples is that, OK Google, let's talk to the name of the app. Or sometimes you want to go even further, you can of course do something like, OK Google, talk to the app for an action. In this case, for hot soup recipes, so you'll just do whatever it needs to do and get the result as fast as possible. So these are some of the ways you can do explicit triggering. Let's take a look at implicit triggering. What this means is that you are not actually telling the application, the Google Assistant, what app you want to launch, but rather you don't really know what is the name of the application. So let's say you want some application to help you find the nearest foodies around your area or the bus reservations around your area. You can, of course, ask Google for something like this. So basically what you're doing, you're asking Google to search the marketplace for apps that match what you want to do. So these are some of the examples that you can trigger from Google Assistant. So if you have it up, if you have Google Assistant installed in your app, in your phone, you can always test it out. But we won't be doing any implicit triggering. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is conversational design itself. So how do you design applications in order to talk to you properly? How to make sure it doesn't sound like a graphical user application. So these are some of the key points that I would like to make so that you can build your application in a way that the user will not feel that it is like a totally robotic response kind of experience. So as you can see in this slide, you'll see that you have babies and the parents, right? So the first thing that comes to mind in this picture is that, of course, the babies are cute, right? But more importantly, what they are doing is that the babies are communicating with each other with baby talk, of course, we won't be able to understand that, and the parent talking to the baby, or rather, let's just talk about human-to-human interaction, right? So let's take, for example, I'm talking to you about the latest Avengers movies. So I'll say, hey, do you want to go watch the latest Avengers movie? Then you say, cool, that sounds great, right? So the next thing you would usually ask your friend is, when do you want to watch that movie? You wouldn't say, when do you want to watch that Avenger movie? And then your friend wouldn't say that, oh, the Avenger movie, actually, I want to watch it next week. Okay, do you think we should book the Avenger movie again next in a different theater or cinema? You'll notice in this conversation, the term Avengers movie keep popping up, right? This is not how humans converse. We converse by just implying the context of what you want to talk. Early on, we have already discussed that what we want to talk was about the movie itself. And the further conversation that we continue talking on is always about the movie. So this is what we want to achieve in your application in the way that your application understands the context of what you're speaking in, rather than asking it over and over again on the subject. So it is really something that we as developers will need to look out for. So the first things first is, what is the differences between GUI and VUI, right? So GUI is, of course, graphical user interface. Every application you use that requires you to look at it is a graphical user interface. So you look at the button, you want to interact with a button, you click on the button, etc. These are all graphical user interfaces. So on the other hand, what we have is now a VUI, a voice user interface. How you can communicate with your app by just using voice. Isn't it more interesting, more human-like to converse with your application very natively? Like how you do it in Iron Man, right? You see Tony Stark talking to Jarvis in such a human-like way. And that is what we want to achieve with your applications. A more human-like approach and to talk to your applications. So let's take a look at the top 3 design tips on how you can build a better conversational design experience. So the first thing is that you need to build a persona. So what we mean by persona here is more like a personality. So for example, let's say you're building an app, right, that is quite serious. Let's say you're building an app to tell you the bus schedule, when the bus will be coming. You want the persona of the application to be professional, right? It's a professional app. You're asking for information, and its job is to just tell you the answer. On the other hand, if I were to create some sort of other app like a joke app or a storybook app in a way, these kind of apps come with a different kind of personality, right? They are more relaxed, more casual. They are more fun to work with. And this is how you want to build your persona for your application. So how do you convey a persona? So usually use it by, the first thing you would use it by tone, right? A better tone for different type of application. For a scary kind of app, you would use a more scarier voice, more deeper voice. But for a professional app, you would a very clear, straight voice in order to work with your application. So these are also some of the other things that you need to take note. Your words and phrases, you have to make sure your phrases are clear and concise and straight to the point for professional applications. So for example, you can say something like, the bus is scheduled to arrive in 5 minutes, right? That is what we mean as clear and concise. And if you're having like a joke or something, you can probably have something like, the bus might not arrive in 5 minutes, who knows, maybe 10, it's up to you, good luck. So these are 2 different kinds of ways you can create your persona, right? So all of this actually engages the user, so the user kind of gets into the mood, so they know that, oh, okay, this app is kind of like a funny app, so you would talk to it more funny, or you interact with it in a more funny way, or application that really means serious business. So of course, this also depends on where you want your app to be targeted with, like, so based on your user population, if let's say your app is only used for the following locality, that current area or province, you'll of course tailor it in a way that it will match what users are currently familiar with that environment. So this, in a way, gives a more personal sense towards the app and you, so you won't feel like it's kind of like a disjointed version somewhere. So it kind of gets to know you and you get to know it better. So let's take a look at the earlier example where we talk about the bus. And in this case, we have something called a pizza application. So in this case, the pizza application has the personality of something that is fun and casual kind of pizza, not really those serious pizza kind of application. So imagine you ask for the pizza app, right? So first thing you will get the following message, right? Okay, I'm back. So as the pizza app, they will say, Kawabanga, dude, what flavors do you crave, right? From this conversation, you'll see that there's something more casual, more Deadpoolish approach towards your pizza application because, of course, Deadpool loves pizza, right? I don't want to explain the joke. It's not very funny. So in a way, for example, if you take a look at the bus schedule application, it is very serious and concise. The users want to know when the bus is coming. It's not a fun game to play, right? I just want to know the answer and you better give me the reply. So in this conversational experience, you will see that the bus is telling you, the app is telling you very precisely what is happening. So you, as a user, know what to do. So these are some of the actions you can tell your applications to do. For example, you can ask it to buy a pizza. You can also ask the application to purchase a ticket, etc. So these are some of the actions you would associate with your application. So the next thing is to think outside the box. Of course, these terms get thrown out every single day. So what this actually really means is that, let's take a look as a developer point of view, what do we actually do when we write code, right? So technically, when we get a problem, right, we go through the problem, we understand what needs to be done, how the customer is able to get the answers they want, and then we dive straight into the code, right? So we write our conditionals, we write our loops, we write our stuff like that, and then you just output the response you want. So input in, and you just get your output. So technically, this is a very traditional way of you writing code. So obviously, when we developers want to write with this kind of code, right, want to write our own conversational apps, right, the first thing you would think is that you will probably write something that if user says, get me a ticket, then pass the ticket out, send a parameter and stuff like that. So it's very logical, very flowcharty. So you will see that in this point of view, apps like this in voice user interfaces do not actually work well because everything has to follow a very serious series of sequence in order to arrive at your destination or your output. So this is what we don't want to achieve in a voice application. What we want to do is to create dialogue and structure. So what I mean by that, the first thing you would think is that don't write any code. The first thing you must think is that you must imagine you're conversing with another person. So assuming it's like a screenplay, you have a play with another person. So let's say, imagine there's another person here with me at the moment. So that person, you will talk to that person. So let's say you want to create an application that sells stuff online, right, for example. So the first thing you will probably ask them is that, I'm looking for, let's say, a new computer, for example. So your friend will say, what kind of computer are you looking for, or do you have any budget, and what are your specs and stuff like that. So this play, you have to write it down in a play-by-play instruction, so like a playbook, play script. So I write those conversations, you write back all of those conversations, and then once you have all of those conversations ready, and they are, of course, like how humans talk, then from those information, you need to extract details of what actions are happening and what are the parameters taking place. So of course, in the earlier conversation, the action here is that you want to look for a computer. So basically, the action here is to look for a certain object, right? In this, the object here is your computer. So it can pass with different forms. So you can say, look for a toaster, look for a television, look for some electronic equipment. So all of this information needs to be taken care of by you as a developer in order to write applications that users know how to interact in a human-to-human interaction. So that way, you are actually bringing a more magical user experience, right, to the user. So I'm not sure how many of you have used the Google Assistant itself. You can actually send WhatsApp messages through your Google Google Assistant. So you can just ask it to send a WhatsApp message. So these are some of the experiences you want you as a developer to build. So this is a link where you can actually take a look at what I have spoken about. So this link contains tips in order to create conversational designs, in order to make sure your app is more human-to-human kind of interaction, is not really a very robotic interaction. So let's take a look at some of the capabilities your application can produce. So earlier on, we talked about voice user interfaces, right? So essentially, that really means that the output of your application is always audio, a voice output. However, voice user applications do not necessarily need to just output voice alone. You can, of course, enhance the experience by supplementing with user interfaces as well. So let's take a list, for example, you ask for a shopping app, right? So let's say I search, can you list down a list of trending computers at the moment? So Google can then display, rather than just telling you by voice, by just saying, okay, here are some of the search I've found, and it will tell you that, oh, there is a computer price at this price, this spec, and then it will keep repeating the next and third, fourth, fifth question, so on and so forth. So it will take very long sentences, right? Imagine a person keep talking you to blah, 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 and then you, of course, doesn't want to hear, you don't really want to hear the conversation anymore, right? So what Google Action has done is that it allows you to supplement with some graphical user interfaces. So in this case, you can do user output to your phone. So imagine I talk to it, and it will supplement to me with voice as well as some cards on the screen. So take a look at that later on how we can do that. So here is an example of a very simple application that displays text and speech at the same time. So you ask for a number, and it displays it out as a text, as well as pronouncing it out in the following way. So this is the very basic way of you to engage with the user, a voice as well as a text output to confirm whatever you heard is fine. So of course, you have some people with a bit of audio impairment, right? Some people who cannot hear properly. So this is where text itself can reconfirm what the application is telling you. For example, if I said, it will arrive in 15 minutes. So the user might be a bit deaf, so they might say, is it 15 minutes or is it 15? So they can, of course, look at the app and see where the number is, and in this case, it can be 15 or 50. So it helps reaffirm the user as to what the application says, as well as what you say to the application. So besides that, sometimes as humans, we rarely talk to computers, right? We basically don't do that at all, right? So there is this disjointed reality between the human world and the computer world. So you wouldn't be able to talk to applications like you do in the Matrix and stuff like that, right? So this is where suggestion chips come in. So let's say you have a game, right? A game app or a bus schedule app. So you can always supplement it with suggestion chips. So what this does is that it gives you suggestions to the users as what they can say. In this case, you can, like this case, you have fun facts about any number. So somehow the user might not very familiar with the word number of some sort. So of course, you can supplement with more information. In this case, you'll see that they have suggestion chips at the side. So let's see if this is working. Not really visible, but never mind. So you can see at the side here, you'll see that in the green bar, you will see that you have a few options which you can press to enter, and it will do it like a conversation, or you can just converse with it. You can say 0, 42, 100, or never mind. So this way, users know what to do next. Of course, further down the road, when your app slowly, the users are more familiar with the app, the users will know what to do in your application. So if we take a look at user interfaces, right, normal graphical user interfaces, we look at the screen and we just take a look around, right? You click on this button, what does this button do? Doesn't do anything. You go to the toolbar, you check out all of this information. So this is more like an exploratory for voice interfaces. So you have a suggestion chips to tell you what you can do. Besides displaying just chips, we want to, of course, provide a more rich experience, right? So let's say you want to buy clothes or buy shoes or buy something that requires the user to inspect with their visual eyes, right? So the first thing you will do is that you can, of course, write your app in a way that it will display with cards. So basically, this is a list of cards. You can display a basic card with the information you want. So let's say you have an information, a travel, tour information. You can talk about, hey, can you tell me what's so special about this place? And they can produce the following cards for so that you can read as well as listen at the same time. And you can just click on it and it will probably open a tourist website or some sort. So these are some of the things that you can do. So the other one you can do is that you can, of course, display a list of items. In this case, you can use lists or carousels. So generally, if you want to display really less items, you would use a carousel, because a carousel is always from a horizontal point of view. You slide to the left, you slide to the right in order to look at various cards. So you can write an application that will tell you the answer as well as supplement you with the following carousels. On the other hand, if you have a lot of data, impossible, you want to show it in a carousel form, right? Because the user will need to swipe all the way to the end or swipe all the way to the front, and they probably lose their view. You don't see a lot of information in a carousel compared to a list. So these are some of the few ways you can enrich the user experience. So we call this as rich experiences for voice. So let's take a look at some variety of apps that I have built for this demo itself. So let's take a look at an example. So most of the apps I'm building is running on Dialogflow. The next session will be talking deeply about how you can build it on Dialogflow. So please do stay tuned for it after this session. So basically, just a quick introduction before the real dive deep done in the next session is that we basically handle the machine learning to Dialogflow itself. So imagine like you create your apps, right? You say, can you look for things under the category of something, like under the category of electronic equipment? Or probably I can say, can you get electronic equipment nearby or at the nearest price? So you have a lot of different variations of your voice sentences, right? Because as humans, we don't follow a very specific way of conversing, right? We always try to change our text to form some sort of variety. So this is where Dialogflow helps you in order to parse all of this through your natural language processing, and then you can determine what is considered as an action, what are the parameters in the actions in order to know what you can perform your application. So as developers, you do not need to actually do parsing of the following text. You don't need to parse which of the following text is the parameter, which are the things that I was considered as the product or the price or the conversion unit. All of this is taken care by Dialogflow. So the first type of application I would like to show you is static applications. So when we hear static applications, is that applications that do not change, right? So basically you see this a lot in websites. So you have like a product list, rather like a profile list, right? That just show you profile details about a company, about me, location, contact us, etc. So these are just basic static applications. For voice applications, we of course can build static applications. So let's take a look at one example which I have built. So for this example is the animal jokes application. So imagine you have a joke application that tells you animal jokes. So in this static application, you basically can ask it, okay, Google, what kind of, talk to me about animal jokes, or get me animal jokes, something like that. So okay, so thank you for that. So with that, you can actually get the app itself. In this case, it's called the animal joke action. And then you can, of course, ask the app to ask what jokes you would like to hear. In this case, I will say dog, or rather nicely, can you give me a joke about dogs, or doggy, or doggy, or doggy, something up to you. So in that case, you can, of course, have your app to just respond to you with the joke. In this case, we would just, for cheating, right, we just substitute the word animal with dog, but say the same joke anyway. So regardless of whether it's cat or dog or whatever, you will still get the same joke, so it's kind of pointless. But this is some examples of a static app. So let's take a look at the demonstration. So let me just go here. So let me just invoke my test app at the moment. So what I'm doing here is that you can, of course, test your applications to make sure it works perfectly well before you release it to the marketplace. So this is a testing console which you can use. So let me just try to invoke it from my phone. So you should be able to see my phone at the moment, so I'm just going to converse with it. Sitting down. OK, Google, talk to my test app. The audio isn't working though. Let me just unplug this.
Sorry, can you repeat your lucky number again?
So as you can see, in this application, it is really a silly name maker.
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
Okay, so it's kind of like interrupting me, which is not very nice. So basically, this is a silly name maker where you can create silly names. So I'm just going to go through the demonstration. 45.
What's your favorite color?
Blue. Blue.
What's your favorite?
Okay. So this is intentional because here you can see the app knows that Lulu is not a blue. It's not blue or not whatever color. So it repeats the question again so that it gets a properly formed answer itself. So let me just ask again. Blue.
How about an animal's name?
So you can give a name like whatever.
All right, your silly name is Blue, so we can give Eileen know what though 45. I hope you like it. See you next time.
So this is an application, it's very simple. All you do is just repeat whatever questions they ask you, right? You just answer them, and then it will form some sort of so-called silly name for you. So these are one example that you can do on your devices itself without having to integrate with any third-party applications except for Dialogflow. So let me just proceed with the next one, next demo. Next one will be integrate your systems to actions on Google. So most of the time, you as developers already have an existing project, right? You already have an existing system that you want to probably expand in a way that you want to reach more users, right? So in this case, you can actually integrate your third-party applications with Google Actions itself. So how do we do it? Let's take a look for an example. So let me just expand this. So take, for example, you will see here is an application. This is more like a sequence diagram, so you know clearly. So let me just explain to you what's happening here. On your left is your device, your actions on Google, Dialogflow. This is Cloud Functions for Firebase, or API webhooks, your webhooks. And that is your own system database. So let's assume we have a system that exposes APIs out. So in this case, what happens here is that, in this case, you have some sort of your own exchange rate business for some sort, right? And you have a different rate compared to xe.com or international rates. So of course, you can of course ask it to do the following: what is your Bitcoin exchange, for example? So of course, you trade your own Bitcoins, you have your own rates and stuff like that. So what happens here is that you can send whatever questions you ask, right? It will go through Dialogflow. Then Dialogflow will process these questions, and then they will know that, okay, what you're trying to do is that you want to know what is the exchange rate of the Bitcoin itself. So then they also know that what are the parameters in the Bitcoin exchange you want to convert from Malaysian ringgit to BTC, for example. So all of this information is parsed and processed by Dialogflow and is sent to your webhook as in the form of a request. So in your request body, you have access to what is the intent or what is the action. The action here is to convert a Bitcoin rate. What is the parameter one? The parameter one in this case will be the rate you want to convert from and the unit you want to convert to. So these are the information that your webhook will receive, like a traditional post request. It will submit a post request through your REST API as normally. And then you can just process the data and then do all kinds of searching if you need to do through your database. and then you can form a sentence if you want to, and send it back to Dialogflow. Then Dialogflow just takes that sentences and just push it back to Google Actions. So Google Actions and Actions on Google will know about it. So let's take a look at a demonstration. In this case, I'm not going to do a Bitcoin thing, but I'm going to do something called a planning tracker. So progress tracker, yep. So progress tracker here is an app that naturally just tracks whatever task you have created on hand. So in this example, I've actually done it connect to a DB, connected to a webhook, just to show you how you can do it. So let me just show it on the phone. Okay, Google, talk to my test app.
Okay, getting the test version of my test app. Welcome to Progress Tracker. Would you like to track a new task or list your existing ones?
So you can see here that I have a few options for you to choose from. This is called suggestion chips. So in case the user doesn't know how to say or panic suddenly, you can of course say to keep track of or track my or list tasks. So in this case, I'm just going to create keep track of something. So keep track of tomorrow's demo in Malaysia.
What's the start date for tomorrow's demo in Malaysia?
Tomorrow. I know it's a bit redundant, but yeah, I forgot about this case, yeah.
In Malaysia.
Tomorrow.
When does tomorrow's demo in Malaysia end?
Next Wednesday. So what happens here is that it's actually...
Now keeping track of the task tomorrow's demo in Malaysia, you have only 3 days before the deadline. Do you want to add another task?
No. No.
Okay. What's the start date for no?
Cancel that. So as you can see here, that this is a card output that you can see. So what happens here is that I've asked it to create a task for me, and then it will create a task in a DB, and then it will send you a confirmation output in the form of a card. So this is using one of the rich responses, which is the card, that tell me what is the exact date. So here I mentioned that the start date is tomorrow, which naturally means tomorrow, and next Wednesday, which you can count yourself to the 25th of April. So all of these details are actually handled by Dialogflow for you. You don't really need to handle it yourself. So you don't need to pass what is tomorrow or next Wednesday is. All of it can be done by Dialogflow natively without you as developers thinking about how to do it yourself. So if you mention something wrong in the date, of course it will come back to you and ask you again the date. So in this example, let me just show you what I have on the console, Firebase console. So if you have access to Firebase, you can, in my scenario, actually use everything from Firebase. So what I did was the app actually will create an entry in my real-time database. So let me just go to my database here. So you'll see that I have a few tasks created on hand. So one of them was this. So all of this can be done in your third-party system without access to Firebase. It works as well. So of course, I can ask it to list the tasks I have as well. Talk to my test app.
All right, getting the test.
List tasks.
Assignment ends on April 27th.
So you will see here, I've also displayed a list of, sorry, actually not showing you anything. So you'll notice here, I've actually listed a list of carousels so that you can look at it. So these are the information you as developer can write in order to supply users for information. So once that's done, let's proceed to the second last demo. So the next demo I want to do is how do you want to integrate IoT with Google Actions, right? Of course, at the moment, you have a lot of commercial ready IoT devices already. You press on the wall wirelessly, it turns on from your phone. But how do you do it through your voice? That sounds more cool, right? It sounds more like Iron Man, right? So if you're like an Iron Man wannabe, then maybe you can try this out yourself. So I have here, in a demo, let's take a look at this sequence diagram. So on my top, you will see that you have your cloud functions, your real-time database, and the last two is actually a Node MCU chip that allows you to write Arduino code that connects to a Wi-Fi API, and then you have your lights as usual. So what I can ask it to do is to turn on the lights, it will send all the details to the database, and my device will receive the update automatically. So let me just go through the demo real quick. So on my hand here, I have whatever I've just done. So whatever you see in the sequence diagram is whatever I have. So it's a very simple Node MCU chip tied to a power bank that is connected on my hotspot. So let's just try to turn on the lights with this. I'm not sure you're able to see from here, but let me just show you. So let me just invoke the app. I'm going to go off mic for a while. So let's hope this works. Okay. Okay, Google, talk to my test app. Talk to my test app.
Okay, let's get the test version of my test app. Hi.
Turn on the lights. So you can see the lights turns on, right? So I can, of course, ask it to do something else, which is to turn it off, right? So let me turn it off. Talk to my test app. 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 Something wrong with my accent.
Test version of my test app.
Turn off the lights. So it should turn off the lights. So you can, of course, extend this approach to physical devices, like high voltage devices. So let's say you want to control a lamp or your television itself. You can, of course, extend it with a relay, etc. So if you want to know more, you can come talk to me on how to do that. So last year, the I.O., we had a soda mixer, cocktail mixer. So you can use Google Voice to actually make the cocktails that you want. So I did a very similar project last year as well. But unfortunately, it was too big to carry around today. So we're settling with what you saw just now. So besides, these are some of the apps that I've developed. And since I just came to Thailand yesterday and I have zero clue how the Thailand language works, so I thought it was a perfect opportunity for me to create a phrases app on Google Actions, just to demonstrate a point. So let me just get it for you. So I developed an app called Thai Phrases. So of course I updated the name of the app so you can access it by the app name. So let me just use it. Talk to Thai Phrases.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Talk to Thai Phrases.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Let me just check and see what is happening. Goodbye. Oh yeah, I got stuck in the previous app. Talk to Thai Phrases.
Sure, here's the test version of Thai phrases.
Hello, learn Thai phrases with me.
Of course, that's not how Thai sound, right? But yeah. So you can see there's a, oh yeah, you're not looking at anything, but there's a few things I can do. For example, I can ask it, what phrases can I learn?
We have a few phrases that we think you might like. The phrases are hello, thank you, where is the toilet, not spicy,
Yeah, so let me just open up for you to see.
one more time.
So these are some of the things that I want to do is that I want to learn the following phrases. I cannot eat spicy food despite that I'm a Malaysian, yeah, but too bad. So I want to understand what are the few phrases. So for example, I can ask, what's hello in Thai?
Hello is
สวัสดีครับ สวัสดีครับ
So you'll see that, you will notice that the language has changed, right? You hear that it was English, and now it's turned to Thai, right? So, what is thank you in Thai?
thank you is
Oh shit, bastard. Let me try that again. What is thank you in Thai?
thank you is
ขอบคุณครับ ขอบคุณครับ
So of course I make it repeat twice so that the users can understand better, especially when so it's kakum krab, sorry. So let's take a look at some other examples. Where is the toilet?
where is the toilet is
ห้องน้ำอยู่ที่ไหน ห้องน้ำอยู่ที่ไหน
So you will see that these are some of the things that you can do in your application. So you can not just talk in text, right? You notice that the actual Thai pronunciation appears. I don't know whether it's correct or not, but I stole it from Google Translate the voices, so I'm not sure that's correct. But what you can do is that you can write application that plays audio as well. So let's say I can create a storybook app for your children, right? Let's say Red Riding Hood or whatever storybooks you have. You can play background music, you can use a soother voice, and your kids can just listen to it at the background. So these are some of the ways you can extend your application with Google Actions. So here are some links that you might find useful. If you really want to know more about Google Actions and Google Assistants in general, please take a look at the following resources. So these resources really helps to build. In fact, all the apps I built today was looking at these resources itself. So with that in mind, Kakum Krab, have a nice day, and thank you.
มีคำถามหรือมี Q&A ไหมครับมีไหมเอ่ยยกมือถามได้นะครับ
Sorry though, I took a lot of your time though.
From your last demo, you use Dialog4 and make interaction with Firebase, right?
Yes, correct.
So how Dialog4 talk trigger an event and talk together with Firebase? How?
Oh, don't worry. Our good friend here will talk about that in the next session. So stay tuned, and you will understand. Yep.
For the reply, like you show that when the assistant reply, you can reply in kind of card type, right?
Yes.
Can you also reply with like say web view or other things? Like what can you do with the reply?
So in this case, we have formed two replies. One is a simple response, and one is a rich response. These are actually just objects that Dialogflow exposes for Google Actions. So will you be talking about rich responses or not? So good news, it will be doing a lot of more great detail, but just to quickly cap, you can do cards, you can do carousels, you can do lists that has a hyperlink. Once you click, it opens a web view that you want, if you need to, and yeah, etc. So these are some ways that you can invoke manually. Okay?
มีคำถามอื่นอีกหรือเปล่าเอ่ยไม่มีโอเค
Okay, thank you.
ขอเสียงตบมือให้คุณลิมอีกรอบหนึงครับ